Thank you everyone for joining. My name is Thibault. I'm a digital experience expert, and I'm accompanied by my good friend Nicolas here.
Hello everyone. Working mostly on Creative Cloud.
And today we're going to talk about something a bit special. We're going to talk about creativity at scale. And so we'll start off with a small video to get things started. Can we have the sound, please?
Maybe if we can have the sound.
Okay, so let's get right into it. So, we already introduced ourselves, but I was wondering if, just quick show of hands, who knows that Adobe is not just in the creative business, but also digital marketing business? Okay, so quite a few people, that's good to know. So let's start things off with, I think, a challenge that all of you guys are sharing today that you still haven't had the answer for, which is, customers are asking for personalization, but it's difficult to solve that challenge in your own companies. And Adobe sees this with a different kind of scale challenge, which is content production. So if we look at the companies that we address today in terms of their content challenge and personalization, they start with some products and services, and then there's the different marketing channels that they need to address. So Meta, Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat, YouTube, for example. A lot of these companies also work in multiple languages. So, that's more content that they need to translate. And then they need to get into the variants, right? Because you have different sizes of content for each of these different social media, the email, and everything else. And then, last but not least, Facebook says, you have to change your content once every little while, or else it's not going to be visible. So that puts a lot of pressure on the content marketers and the content producers to be able to curate to that personalization trope. And so this is part of the challenge that Adobe is here to solve. So if we look at the people that are impacted by this whole challenge, well, first, we're looking at the marketing people. They're running fewer campaigns because it's difficult to keep up with content creation. It's impossible to do so. And so they're not doing as many campaigns or as many quality campaigns. If we look at operations and the creative people, it's costly to create content. Sometimes you have to rely on your own agencies. Sometimes you have internalized all of that. But since you have to create more content and you don't have the tools to make it work, it's difficult to scale all of that content creation. Last but not least, marketers and creatives are not the only people that are, associated to that process. It's also people in the rest of the company. So the legal teams, finance teams, sometimes people who have to review the messaging before it gets communicated to customers. And so they also need to work with the creatives and the marketing people without the silos that the company has. So how do we solve that problem of the silos between all of these different people? This is where Adobe's answer is what we call the content supply chain. The content supply chain is basically a virtuous circle of content ideation to production, to putting that content out there where your customers are, and understanding how that content performs once it's out on social media or on emails. And what we're going to focus on today is on the content production aspect with 3 different solutions. The 3 different solutions we're going to talk about are Adobe Firefly services, and Nicolas will be taking the stage to cover this one for you. The second element is going to be Adobe GenStudio for performance marketing to create social media campaigns at scale. And last but not least, we'll have Adobe Express to help your companies address the last mile of communication with your customers. So Nicolas, up to you.
Thank you, Thibault. And as you can imagine, in all this, we're going to discuss about AI and how AI will augment the teaming effort, the meaning of a brand, the meaning of a DNA, and the promise on the market. So to give an echo to the numbers that Thibault has showcased earlier, the scale that brands are looking for, we're going to take the opportunity of a journey. This journey will be around the launch of a new set of trail bags that will be the very origin of our narrative. And this campaign will not be just a spot one, tactical one, it will be a broad one, like probably the one that you're going to address on market, or brands are addressing on markets that are global and very often challenging ones. First off, I'm in charge of a creative department, but my teams are limited. I don't have time to do every clicks in every single steps of assembling content individually for all those touch points. So that's the very purpose of Firefly services, which are sets of APIs at Adobe, creative ones, generative in terms of image, video, audio, but not only. Means that Photoshop, InDesign, all this technology is also involved and used as a lever to automate processes. That's what we're going to say. What we're going to see right now is that, Thibault, we have a bunch of new trail bags that are ready to be promoted on the market. But first off, we can see clearly that they are not uniform in terms of look and feel. The first shoots, whether they are real shootings or maybe 3D staging, they are heterogeneous in terms of format, and I need to be sure that they are ready to be consumed and augmented on the market. At first, probably the best practice would be to create a project that will be not only just cascading through the teams to bring responsibility where the teams are involved, but also creating triggers for automation in my platform. And that's what we're going to see. I create a trail bag ad campaign at scale initiative. And of course, I can source my material from wherever it is in my organization. It could be in my digital asset management, it could be collaborative folders, it could be cloud storage, whatever. As an ad director, I select the ones that are clearly usable in my campaign, the product, the SKUs that need to be involved. And I don't only just brief in text, I add those materials, those visuals to the brief to make it even more fancier and clearer for my teammates. I click on Submit, and this is now ready to be distributed among my teams to make sure that everybody's informed, well informed, and of course, in terms of processes, the workflows that are going in the background will be starting. But again, I have a DNA as a brand, and this brand is a fictional one, of course, The Weeknd. It has an art direction. I don't want to be just decreasing the quality of expectation. I can select the references that will be merged with my prompts. It's not only just prompting for once and one for all. It has an art direction, it has visual guidance, but it will be also combined in the between steps for my channels, for customer data, customer segmentation, so make it the prompt even more individual than expected. And all those steps in between, they are running without me having some clicks. So it means that the cropping, the generation of a background, the generation of a fill, it will be all sequenced in a step, of course, that is reflecting my needs in terms of organization. So this is running in my background, and it's clearly soothing for the teams because they don't have to replicate that manually. But so you can see for clarity what's happening on behind the scenes that this. My backpack, my trail bags, I remove the background. Classic step. Now I just combine with my DNA to have an art direction and the visual of my past campaigns to make it a visual reference. I use them as an ingredient to be combined with my prompts. And of course, the result out of it is staging that is taking the opportunity to have visually appealing, convincing and adjusted and adapted to markets, whether it's for a specific season or a specific format, or maybe even language through translation mechanics. Now I can export those material in different formats. If they have to be blended in one single layer assembled JPEG, that's fine. But if I want to keep control, because we are talking about AI that is under the control of people, your people, I want to have a final look, final cut. I could have a PSD with multi-layer. That's the very strength of Adobe. Then it can be distributed when produced, either definitively because it's been ready to be consumed, or I want to have a final check. That's what I'm about to do right now. So I go in my collaborative area now, and I will have right away the result of what has been produced by my automation processes. And as you can see now, you got all the visuals that are assembled on the fly by my ingredients that I've put, either, again, data, visual references, context, even text if necessary, but then ready to be checked by human beings, people that are the very historical, I would say, team effort and mastery of where you want to go in that campaign. I think on this demo, I will select one specifically because on this visual specifically, I just can notice that there's a shadow that is not sufficient. This shadow here, you can see there's some visual intensity that is missing. And here, I will definitely still have capability to adjust. I will notify someone in my team by just dropping an arrow, selecting an area, and mentioning the fact that in this spot here, precisely, the generative part of the rendering was not sufficient, and I want to improve the shadowing underneath. And underneath, it will be added either through another batch of processes through generative AI, or manually painted with the selective gen fill like you would do in Photoshop and in Firefly. And of course, then it can be put to status approved, corrected, and then, like we do now, selecting all the assets that have been prepped automatically based on visual guidance and artistic direction that is mastered by my own control, then ready to be distributed with my fellow at the marketing team. Thibault now will have this handover in his DAM, the digital asset management, ready to be consumed for the rest of the activation and rollout of our strategy.
Thank you, Nicolas. So there's a very distinct, difference between the creative process that happens in the tools that Nicolas showed, and here this is the tool that's meant for marketers. So once these assets are approved, this is where I'm going to find them. So let's move on to the next step of our campaign. Now that I have these beautiful assets that Nicolas has created for me, I'm going to move on to GenStudio for performance marketing to create programmatic campaigns across social media. Okay, let's see how we do this. So, I need to start the demo. There we go. So you have one thing. I'm sorry, there's a return on the microphone. Okay, perfect. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. So here you have one pane of glass where you're going to be able to see everything that happens in GenStudio for performance marketing. In the Régie, if you could start the video for me, please. That would be awesome. Thank you. So one pane of glass where you can find all of the content that has been approved in the previous step. And we can start creating all of the social media posts that will be sent out on Meta, for example, or on Snapchat. And then we have the activate layer and the insights to sort of understand, okay, what's happening with the content that has been released on social media, and can I understand, how well it has performed. So, seems we have a bit of a problem around the video. I'm clicking. It sends to the next slide. There is a video. Awesome. Thank you so much in the background. So what I'm going to do is start a meta campaign. Okay, so I'm going to use a template, my brand's template. So what I'm going to do is select the weekend brand, which is the brand that I'm communicating for, and I'm going to select that specific campaign template on the screen. Next, what I'm going to do is to select a persona. So here I'm going to select adventurers. Adventurers, they're sort of like brand ambassadors, and I want them to test the bag before anyone else. The next thing is I'm going to select the language. There's multiple languages that you can select. And I'm going to select my bag, which is the Rio bag that Nicolas has put into its specific environment. And here I'm going to select these bags to create the communication. What you don't see in the background is actually I've given GenStudio the elements around how my brand communicates. So the branding guidelines, the types of images, the type of copy that I want to create, the messaging that I want to do, and also the brand elements around the colors, the typography. All of this is ingested within my tool and is going to be reused to create a social media post. And for that specific campaign, for those of you who can't read it in French, we're going to try to get people to come in the stores to test the Rio bag. And I want to add an additional layer to that post, which is around the sturdiness of this bag. You know, it's a bag meant for adventure, so I want to showcase that sturdiness. And with the click of a button, what's going to happen here is I'm going to have 4 different variations of a social media post, leveraging the template and the way that my brand speaks to my customers. That's going to be automatically generated by AI. And it's going to be on brand using all of the elements that I've given to the tool. And so here, a little bit of magic, but we have 4 posts in French in their different environments with the assets that Nicolas has given me. And then all of the copy that you see, so the text description and the CTAs, all of that has been generated by AI. Okay? Next thing that I'm going to do, because I want you as marketers to have control, is I have a brand check at the top right of each post, and I can check accessibility and social media elements, okay, because they have their own specific guidelines. But I can also review my brand score. So the brand score, the 91 that you see, is how well my post adheres to my brand guidelines. And so here I can see recommendations of what is not respectful of my brand, but what is also respectful of my brand to understand, am I communicating on brand? And if I need to do specific adjustments around the text, if I need to change some of the colors because I'm not seeing things clearly here, I've given all of that element. It's the DNA already inside the tool. So let's check that image for a second. Let's imagine I want to change it, okay? Another layer of control that I'm giving to marketers. Let's say the focus was off, but then the AI into the tool has decided that the focus should be the bag. I can change things again. So now, perhaps I want to check how it's going to look on Instagram, okay? And the last thing that I want to do, with a second click of a button, mind you, because I've only clicked one button before. Now this is the second button that I'm going to click, and with that, I'm going to generate even more social media posts. So I'm going to click on the different formats that I select, and with a second click of a button, in under 3-4 minutes, I've created 12 social media posts with the different sizes that create a lot of engagement on Instagram or on Facebook, for example. And as you can see, the bag has been in focus for all of these communications. So that's the AI that we bring into this tool to scale content production for marketers. One thing that I could do is that I can request approval. So for example, if Nicolas is not happy with the content that I've created as a marketer, he can review a little bit of that. And so now let's put ourselves in the shoes of the marketer, but a week after the campaign has started. And I want to understand if the content that I've posted is performance. Okay, is it driving engagement in my stores? Is it driving engagement on social media? And baked into the tool, we have the typical, advertiser CTAs, KPIs that come within the tool. But then we also have an additional layer, which is, I'm going to browse down a little bit. And what you can see here, the attributes, all of these are tagged by AI in my system. And what I'm going to do is to count the CTRs, the CTAs against these specific attributes to understand, okay, what's working in my communication? Is it a certain type of color? Is it photography? Is it video? Is it a different type of bag? Okay, I want to be able to understand what creates all of that engagement. And what you can see here, and we're going to filter on the attributes level, is that I'm able to go very deeply into these specific attributes to sort of understand, okay, what do I need to focus on in the next campaign? So here, for example, I'm at the very deep level, the attribute level. What I'm going to do is I'm going to filter on CTRs. And what you will see is that there's a maroon color that seems to drive more engagement for some reason. And I want to compare it to other colors that I've been using in some of my communications. So let's see, maroon, it drives 56% CTR that you can see over there. And I'm going to compare it with perhaps another color that I've been using in my social media posts recently, which is dark. So what we're going to look for is the dark attribute somewhere, so black, it's at 10% CTR. Okay? What this does is, it doesn't just give you the insight that black doesn't perform well over maroon. It means that if you have to refresh the campaign this week, you're going to focus on maroon more than black because black is not working. So here we get into that feedback loop, which is very positive to drive even more engagement. And with that, we're done with GenStudio. We've done our social media campaign. Nicolas.
Thank you, Thibault. I think I have the brief for the next iteration of my workflow, so that's cool. We've seen everything that Thibault's team has put to motion in terms of programmatic effort. Strategy, marketing, omnichannel, clearly. But what we also know is that in an organization, in a brand, there are multiple profiles, personas that can help and support such marketing initiative, sales initiative, but not completely creative, not completely belonging or mastering all the codes, but needs to engage on brand. And that's where reactively, on the shelf, they can benefit from Adobe Express. So that's a complement for people who would not be completely the same as Thibault's team, but they will have an important role in this. So we're going to talk about local engagement in several ways. For the sake of time, I will only select 2 out of 3 I had prepped. The first one is, let's imagine a shop owner. This guy would be probably working under the guidance principle of a brand that is declared in Express, with logos, with fonts, with templates, with kits for campaigns and tactical ways to bring people in his shop, in or her shop. And there, I would start with a point where I have layers, I have formats, but they are already prepped by my marketing team with the degree of control that they want, and want to be sure that avoiding that I would make maybe mistakes because they would not be confident with my capability to do a design properly. So as you can see, some areas are locked. And this is cool and key because for me it's a tranquilizer. Clearly I can engage without having any kind of fear. What I would do in this example is that I can select not only just a specific visual, which I would do, connecting back with the rest of my approaches on brands, and I will select one that is coming from my digital asset management. You can see the backpack and one of the backpack I had prepped earlier. And also, since they gave me this possibility, I have an area for maybe improving or adding my own approach to the level of discount. And that's what I'm about to do right now, so I will probably go in a few seconds in another area. As you can see, this 15 here. I am owning my own business, but I do that in the control and the fact that my marketing is supporting me. I will be more generous and I will select 20% in this. And then it's ready to be promoted, published on my social touchpoints. And to do so, I can connect tactically with my social properties, but I will be also supported by AI. So not being a copywriter, I need to be sure that I'm also having the tone of voice that is expecting. So what I can now have is based on the understanding of this layout, there's a description that can be generated automatically with the right level of engagement, the hashtag, ready to be promoted on the web. So under the brand, on brand, under the guidance that have been anticipated by my marketing, complementing what my marketing has prepped and ready to be published right away or later. Second example I will skip, it was about translation locally for maybe countries that are not staffed enough. They want to leverage kits or campaigns that would be maybe in a general common one language, then transcribing and translating them in their area. But I will go right away to conclude on the third one. Let's imagine we are talking about AI, but we are talking about digital. But I want also to insist on the complementarity with real life, real world. So what if this brand of trail bags, they need to be promoted by sales guys? Sales guys who are discussing with the sales ecosystem, resellers, distributors. They need to convince them with appealing, convincing presentation. So why not use Express as a center cornerstone, maybe to have this also kind of capabilities fostered inside. So what I do now is not only just have a PowerPoint or slideware, but also leveraging another example of what has been put with my APIs on Firefly in terms of appealing visual, not for static image anymore, but selecting in my DAM a bag that has been put to motion in my slideware presentation automatically in a way to interact in a more even convincible way in real life. So distinct personas than the marketing, but contributing to the growth engine of the company. So we've seen multiple ways to produce this content at scale, automatically, but always on brand. I insist on that, and on control of teams. Secondly, Thibault, the capability to engage, activate, based on touch point driving absolutely all the interaction, and making sure that you are always top-notch on the quality of interaction and conversation. And of course, again at scale, because we are not about to produce that manually per each team that would be to be involved. And last but not least, clearly the capability to have different people that would not be implied, classically speaking, but would be benefiting the Express technology to leverage the joint effort with Thibault and the rest of the marketing crew.
So that's the end of our presentation. Sorry, we're a little bit late with the demo problem. We're on the booth over there, so almost at the entry with a big ball that says Adobe on top. If you want to continue the conversation then, come find us. Thank you so much.
Thanks a lot.